to South Koreans, China's authoritarian system prevents the European Union from cooperating as partners with China to lead the world in addressing global climate change. So maybe we'll do that a little bit later. I think to sure that we want to also talk about the notes and common agricultural policy notes we began to talk about, and we didn't really spend too much time talking about the environmental issues. But the time to talk more about environmental policies. Environmental issues have risen high on the European Union agenda. I think we began to talk about that at the last class. Their first presence focused on common standards being necessary in order to avoid distorting competition and building the single market. So, that's always the entrance way by which the European Union attempts to move on to new policy areas like common internal migration policies or border policies, or is that it's necessary to do that in order to come up with a genuine single market for labor. So we have to have common environmental policies because we have to have common rules for protecting the environment if we're going to have a genuine single market. And and of course, when you put policy areas within the framework of the single market, the single economic market, that means you give primarily responsibility to the European Commission. The European Commission then plays the dominant role whenever you frame a policy issue like environment or immigration or border control or even women's rights and LGBTQ rights as part of the single market. Because if we really want to encourage the movement of labor across borders, then we have to have some kind of standard rules regarding how we treat people and how we protect workers' rights. We can't discriminate against workers on the basis of gender, for example. So that should fit under the single market. And that goes back to the roots by which the European Union was founded. The European Union was founded with the focus on economic integration. And keep in mind, this class is a lot about strategy. It's about political strategy. And as someone famous once said, politics is the art of the possible. Politics is the art of what is politically feasible. And if you want to make policies happen and work for positive change in any place, you have to have political support. You have to have political support. And you try to build political support. And that means also focusing on economic interests and building up political support by encouraging economic investments in certain policies. And then you build up companies, workers, white collar workers, blue collar workers, manual laborers. They all get a vested interest in these policies, and they can make more money by expanding their economic activity, by feeling more secure and confident about the single market. Then they become more willing to support you in coming up with, say, common agricultural policies, common environmental policies, for example, because it's good for business. And you've already built up supporters who in the business sector, in these different companies, in these different governments, in these different civil society organizations who are already working within the single market framework. Then they can make one more step towards say, well, we really should come up with common rules and regulations regarding the right for women and men to have paid leave, paid daycare leave when they have a new baby. Because it's not fair that in Germany they have much more time to take off for paid leave than in Italy. And I, as a company working in the European Union with lots of investments in factories around the European Union, it would be a lot easier for me and my company if there was one single set of policies regarding paid leave, paid family leave to take care of a newborn baby. And so, yeah. You go, European Union. You go, European Commission. I support you. So that's one of the benefits of working around the single market, because the single market began back in the 1950s with the common coal and steel community, as the beginning of this process. So over years and years and lots of investments, you build up supporters. And this is the neo-functional approach that companies and businesses that have already planned their business strategies and their investments now and in the future around the single market, they can see that they can have even more efficiency and more ease in making more profits if they support the European Union's efforts to come up with common environmental policies, common family leave policies, common policies regarding expectations regarding what percentage of the company's directors in any big company in European Union should have diversity, gender diversity. So that's been a big commitment of the European Union, that they want large companies should have at least 30% of their boards of directors be female. 30%. And that's a common expectation that all companies face, big companies face. And so they don't feel that they are at a competitive disadvantage because they have to do something in Germany, which they don't have to do in Italy. No, you all have to do it because you're in the European Union. So building around the single market is makes good political sense, because you know me, I talk all the time about nationalism, but I'm also very much aware that nationalism is not the only motivation behind human political behavior. Money is really important, and people like making more money. And if you can encourage them to support your pro-change policies, because it will help them make even more money in the European context, then they're likely to be more supportive of that. Keep in mind, this effort to focus on economic single market, that was a decision made in the period right after World War II, where the first commitment was, well, we have to integrate, let's try to integrate in our democracies. Let's try to integrate in terms of common human rights support policies, common human rights defense policies. And that's too controversial to push very strongly. With the foundation of the Council of Europe in 1948, that's that big human rights organization in the European area that is older than the European. And that might make sense right after World War II and the horrible human rights violations that we saw in Europe during the 1930s and 40s, but it's too sensitive. And it was too politically controversial to push forward very rapidly on democracy and common democracy standards and common minority rights protection standards and common standards regarding how courts should function. Very important, but very, very sensitive. But money and business, people can understand making adjustments and compromises and changes in their policies if they think they can make more money. So the European coal and steel community was not the first effort at integration. Human rights was, but human rights is too politically sensitive. And so we see, even as the European Union moves, in effect, more and more into human rights protection for women, for gender minorities, for racial minorities, it's building upon the 50 years on economic integration and the economic interests and political support that 50 years of economic integration produced to lead to the Maastricht Treaty, the Treaty of Maastricht that created officially the European Union, and that increasing focus on what are in effect human rights issues phrased in terms of we have to do this to have a genuine single market. And we need a single market if we're going to compete with those Americans and now with that big China. So environmental issues also emerged in that context of being necessary in order to avoid distorting competition in building the single European market, right? It's not fair if to Spanish companies, if Spain has more stringent economic environmental protection laws than does France. So let's come up with some standard environmental policies. So policy consistency and direction was necessary. Again, this is about political support. You can't do anything in modern politics unless you have political support among the public, at least among powerful groups among the public. And that means you have to give them incentives to support you. And as I already mentioned, 80% of human interaction in society is business economic related. And then you build upon that foundation, that political foundation of the art of what is possible. And the Single European Act back in the 1980s established the environment as a legal issue area in which the European economic community can function. And then the Maastricht Treaty, and then 1996 Amsterdam Treaty, and then the 2009 Lisbon Treaty further emphasized sustainable development and environmental protection. And they are harmonious, are part of harmonious and balanced economic growth. Who can be against harmonious and balanced economic growth? You're not against it. I'm not against it, right? So public opinion acquired greater influence in designing environmental policy through institutional changes, specifically by promoting the development of the European Union. That the European Union, you know, these institutions, including the European Union or any institution, the Catholic University of Korea, the United States government, the Girl Scouts of America, any institution is functionally interested in defending its existence and expanding and developing its existence. And because of the economic and political and vested interest in it. So the European Parliament is a relatively younger institution that only became formally equal with the Council of Ministers and the European Commission with the Treaty of Lisbon. So just 12 years ago, did the European Parliament at least officially become one of the equal institutions in the European Union. And as I said, you have to have political public opinion support in modern politics. So where is this new young, relatively young institution going to get support? It's going to try to build support in areas that are opportunities, and environment has been this area of opportunity, one of the areas of opportunity for the European Parliament, particularly as the European Parliament is looking for public opinion support among sections of society in the public that are more likely to support this. And supposedly young people, you are much more in support of environmental policies, generally speaking, than older generations. So if you can get young people on your side, if you want to get young people on your side, talk more about the environment. And qualified majority voting in the Council of Ministers became the main decision rule for environmental promotion, environmental protection. And then, of course, since the collapse of the Cold War, we see that environment has become more and more of a pressing issue, particularly regarding, not only, but particularly regarding global climate change. Okay, so you can say, well, this is great. This is wonderful, Professor Ben. Who's against a good, clean environment? Who is against these things? Who opposes sustainable development? Who can be against it? Of course, most people are not against it, right? Until you get into the details, until you get into the trade-offs that you have to make in terms of what we are going to do today in paying a price today for long-term benefits or long-term avoiding long-term dangers in the future. So here we see, I want to always show you how these issues are really important today in terms of politics. So let me hide this right now and ask you a question. So please respond to the following statement. The European Union's fixation on providing environmental protection leadership, because the European Union is all about providing environmental protection leadership, risks generating hostility among the European Union as being a so-called elitist project. So does the European Union risk its support among public opinion by being so supportive of environmental protection in sustainable development? So there's, of course, an article, a news report that I want to highlight here when we talk about this. But let me ask you to come up with a position. So I think I don't know if two people are actually here. I see three people. So let's put you into one participation, one working group. And so is this how you make up, put people into breakout rooms? Breakout rooms, is this where I click to go into breakout rooms? To make rooms, is this where? This one? Oh, thank you. Okay. So there's three people, so we'll put you into one group, okay? So please join the group, join that group, and one, please join the group. So Maria, where are you, Maria? Oh, that's why I asked you to join. Yeah, that's right. That's why I asked you to join, because can you join the group so you can be part of this group? Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Now, yeah, that's why we want you to another reason to join, because so maybe I will let me make you into two groups. So okay, so Maria, please join group room 2. And so have you logged in, Maria? Okay. So I don't see where you're at though. If you joined, I don't see you here. Oh, okay. So why are you not showing up? Okay. All right. So I need to go here and let's say we make the groups and then assign manually. And let's see if I can do this. I'll put you two here, and then I'll put you two here. Okay, so there are two groups. All right, so please join the groups and come up with a position. So two of the people who are in the class are not here today, so you have to communicate with them by phone or by microphone, and come up to a position where your group fits on this issue as to whether or not you think that the European Union's fixation on environmental policy is too elitist. And then I want to show you a news report about how this is playing into politics today in Europe. Okay, so, and then who's going to speak? So let me flip a coin. So Owen Tech and UJE are in group 2, and Maria and Kang Tamun are in group 1. And it is heads. So Maria and Owen Tech are going to speak for the two groups. And of course, this is just aiming to get you speaking and thinking about the topic. So again, here is the question. The European Union's fixation on providing environmental protection leadership because that's what the European Union is all about, right? The European Union wants to be a civilian superpower, a nice superpower, not like a military superpower like the United States, not like China with its authoritarian one-party, even totalitarian state. The European Union wants to be a civilian soft superpower, and it wants to lead the world in environmental protection and stopping or limiting global climate change, global warming, and promoting the development of sustainable development through green technology, renewable energy, moving away from coal and oil and gas, and instead using solar power and also wind power, where you have those big wind turbines that turn and in the air, in the wind, and generate lots of fuel, not lots of fuel, yeah, lots of electricity without burning anything. That's great, isn't it? Isn't that great? Who could be against that? And I should write a statement as well. So let me decide where I'm at on the scale. And heads, I am 1 or 2 or 3. And it's heads. So I'm 4. Heads. So tails. Sorry, so I strongly disagree. So I strongly disagree. So see here. See where I see it. I strongly disagree. So okay, so that's what I was assigned. So let's go back to the breakout room here, and then we go to, and to close breakout rooms, I click here to close the breakout room. Oh, so, okay. Do you need a couple more minutes? Are you talking to Kang Tong-un? Oh, okay. I didn't hear you. What about Owen Tech? Are you talking to UJE? Oh, yeah. Oh, you're typing. I thought, okay. Oh, you can use your phones if you want to, or you can use your microphones. You don't be afraid to do that. We have to use all of the wonderful technology that Microsoft and Google and Samsung and Facebook have provided to us, right? So it's Motun Wei Shil Tang Tatki. That means to leave, right? Leave breakout rooms. That's what I would click to leave, right? Own Tech. I would click here to close the breakout rooms. I click here. Oh, okay. I thought so. It's just, you know, in my, like I said, in my office, it's all in English. But when I come to these computers, could I, if I make click, what happens if I click here? Does it change? Click here. It says, if I want to make it English, I click here. This will turn everything into English. Okay, let's see if it works. Does it work? Is everything in English now? It's still in Korean. So I guess not really. What if I turn that off? Oh, yeah, it's too late now. I don't want to shut down everything and lose everything. Yeah, okay. I should learn Korean. But the problem is the university, they evaluate my job performance on how many things I get published, and they don't. And for me, learning Korean, that would be strictly my own benefit. It doesn't really matter to the CUK administration. They want me to spend my time on getting things written. So, but I tell myself someday I will devote myself fully to Korean language. Okay, so okay, so 60 seconds. Okay, so let's hear what, well, we'll flip a coin. What are your group's thoughts on this topic? Sorry, you could not decide? You agree? And why do you agree? See, that's a good point. That's a very good point. You know, that's a continual curse, in my view, of the European Union. It's an elite project. This European integration project, that's not driven by the mass of the population. It's a project of the ruling authorities in Europe after World War II, that they made a commitment that they have to cooperate with each other to keep each other in power. These new after fascist governments, these post-World War II governments that came to power after the horror of Mussolini and the horror of Hitler and their allies came to power after the fascists were removed. And these leaders, these traditional leaders, not like these weird, unusual, hyper-popular, but very superficial fascist leaders in Germany and Italy, they emerged back from the shadows where they went in the 1930s. So, like, for example, Konrad Adenauer, who became the prime minister, the first post-war prime minister of West Germany, he was already an old man when he became prime minister. And he had been a politician in Germany before Hitler came to power. He was a Catholic Christian Democrat. And there was a whole group of those people who they hid while the fascists were in power, while Hitler was in power. And then when the invasion forces removed the Nazi elite was very thin. They were a marginal group of people who, during a time of crisis in Germany, with the Great Depression and the and other economic sufferings from the great inflation in the 1920s, destroying everybody's money that they had saved, then followed by the Great Depression, when people lost then their jobs, and this all happened after the humiliation of losing World War I. This Nazi elite emerged, but it didn't have deep roots in the society. So when these people were removed, they left really, almost, particularly in Germany, almost no legacy. I mean, there are fascist type leaders in Germany after World War II, fascist aspiring leaders, but they have very minuscule support, very little support. They went back into to being on the margins like they had been before World War I. And Konrad Adenauer comes into power, and he cooperates with French traditional ruling elites, Belgian traditional ruling elites, Italian Catholic Christian Democrats, and they cooperate with each other to help each other stay in power. And that means they have to stabilize the economy, they have to rebuild the economy, give people jobs, and they have to avoid wasteful, dangerous, needless political and economic competition with each other. They know this, they understand this, that for me, Konrad Adenauer, to stay in power, I have to help you, the nice new French leaders, stay in power. And I have to help you, the nice new Italian leaders like Alcide de Gasperi, stay in power. And you have to help me stay in power. So we have to cooperate. And this is what's called in chapter 1 of the book, liberal intergovernmentalism, that this commitment by the ruling elites of Italy, Belgium, Germany after World War II to make this work is critically important and remains critically important for this whole European Union project to exist. And then professors and journalists who are all enthusiastic about this peace strategy, they write textbooks like the textbook you're using by Jonathan Olson. And if you live in this world, like you live in this world, and I live in this world of European Union, sustainable development, fighting global climate change, LGBTQ rights, single market, blah, 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 blah. We talk to each other, and it's human nature that we start to assume that, you know what, the whole world is like this. It's like us. Everybody thinks about the European Union and supports European integration like we do. Because you know why? Because that's all we know. We talk to each other and we assume that everybody's like us, which is wrong. Oh my God, the British voted to leave the European Union. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. Oh my, and it's not just the European Union. Oh my God, the Americans elected Donald Trump. And there's that continual danger, right? You see it in even among the member states, when particularly France took the leadership in negotiating the draft European Union Constitution in 2004 with a former French president, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, as the chairperson of the convention to write the European Union Constitution. Yay, France! Yay, European Union! Yay, yay, yay! And the French people say, no. Ah! And partly for this reason, the European Union doesn't want to have referendums on anything anymore. No more direct election, no direct votes by the people on whether or not to approve new treaties. And even as the European Union has become more and more strong and powerful in creating, for example, Eurobonds and in next generation European Union, that has all been done without, you notice, any kind of votes by Ireland or France or the Netherlands on whether or not to approve those changes by votes of the people, like they used to do 15 years ago. No. So, and maybe this is a good point to highlight, you know, something that I've talked about a couple of times here in terms of why the European Union functions. And, you know, this is from my favorite textbook, my favorite book, the book that has my theoretical framework that I use from my professor. And this is a table from that book highlighting the orientation of these states, of China, Japan, Korea's, Eastern Europe, that includes Poland, Hungary, Western Europe, that includes, of course, France, Spain, Germany, and then Islamic states, multi-ethnic Asian states. These are all post-colonial states created by the European powers when they drew the boundaries in Africa and Asia. In terms of orientation towards behaving nationalistically. And I don't want to go into this too much right now. And this book is already 20 years old. But notice here, right? This refers to how do the pro-reform, pro-change, pro-reform through policy change leaders in these countries, how do they try to appeal to the people of their country to support these changes? And this is double plus in Asia, because pro-change reform and change groups in China, they say we have to carry out strong, far-reaching reforms through policy in China to make China great again, to make the nation strong and influential. We must do this to make China powerful and strong. That's why we need change, 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 change. So do the pro-change oriented elite articulate rhetorically in terms of talking to their students and the readers of newspapers and the watchers of television? Do they appeal for support by saying we must carry out these difficult reforms in our economy, in our society, in our political system in order to make China strong? Double plus. Double plus in Eastern Europe, right? In Bulgaria, in Poland. Even when I was in Bulgaria until 2009, we have to carry out difficult revolutionary changes in Bulgaria's post-communist world, post-communist society, post-communist economy, post-communist politics. And why must we do this? To bring Bulgaria back to Europe, to make Bulgaria a strong, healthy, vibrant country. Double plus. You see it also in the United States, a little less so. But notice here, double negative. If you're going to advocate for change in your society, in Germany or in France, you're not supposed to, and you will tend not to, say we have to carry out these changes in order to make Germany great again. No, 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 no. Not after the experience of World War II. These are the people that lead European integration. We must carry out change to promote global sustainable development, to fight climate change, to promote the rule of law in international relations. We must carry out difficult changes to support sustainable development, to promote the rights of all, to end racism, to protect the rights of animals. You don't carry out, advocate reforms in your country by saying, we must do this to make Italy great again, to make France great again. No, no. Now, there are people that do that. Salvini in Italy, Marine Le Pen in France, Zemmour, the second candidate running for far right and president in France today, but they're not part of the establishment. They're the outsiders that have emerged in the last several years in these countries. The Alternative für Deutschland. Yeah, you do find those people, but you see these establishment people in France, in Italy, they make an alliance with each other to keep those nationalist leaders out of power. And so far, they have succeeded in Western Europe, in France, in Italy, and Germany. Question is, can they continue doing this? So, I mean, again, the European Union is an elite-led constructivist project. Well, but of course, but then we look at their societies, the public is still in Germany, in France, in Italy, is still susceptible to nationalist appeals. So this refers to public opinion. Would Italians respond? Will French respond? And Emmanuel Macron is running for president for re-election in France, part of this establishment, and his main challenge is coming from French nationalists, militant nationalists. Okay, and so he's got to be concerned about this topic. And so let's go then back to own tech. So where did you place your group on this scale? Okay, I'll tell you why. Here's this great news report that came out yesterday in the New York Times, the holy grail of American news media. Just to go on here, in one area of France, worries about rising. Remember, you speak French, right? How do you say yellow vest? The yellow vest movement. The yellow vest social uprising in France. In one area of France, worries about rising energy prices, Trump anxiety about rising temperatures, raising fears of resurgence of the yellow vest social uprising. So this is a populist movement that emerged a couple of years ago in Europe against Emmanuel Macron, when Emmanuel Macron and his party in France raised the price of taxes, raised taxation levels on French gasoline, right? It says here, just 75 miles separate, this provincial town from Paris, but the capital is all but a renewable energy is all about. So in Paris, I got renewable energy, wind power, solar power, all right? The talk here is how it costs people way too much in this small town outside of Paris. We want to go too fast, said Jean-Pierre Dour, a conservative lawmaker with a lot of angry constituents. People even pushed to the limit because the French government is passing policies to promote wind and solar and trying to reduce coal and oil and natural gas use in France. And how do you encourage companies and businesses to reduce their use of oil, coal, and gas? You raise the cost of oil, coal, and gas by increasing taxes, by increasing tariffs on oil, coal, and gas. And that raises the price of oil and gas. It makes zero net emissions by the middle of the century. We're supposed to cut emissions by 50% in 7 years. We're not by 2030. It's an emergency, right? And Europe claims to be a leader in promoting this effort around the world. 3 years ago, it goes on here. 3 years ago, Montargis became a center of the Yellow Vest social uprising, an angry protest movement over increasing gasoline taxes that was sustained, sometimes violently, for more than a year by a much broader sense of alienation felt by those in outlying areas that France calls its periphery. Again, that outlying areas that France calls its periphery. In other words, Paris is one, sort of like the Koreans view Seoul, right? What's the top three? In the rest of Korea, that's the province. The same in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, the center of Bulgaria, Sofia. In the rest of the people who live in the other provinces of Bulgaria, we're all still people who live out in the provinces. Right? And in France, they're very open about this. Places outside of Paris belong to the periphery. Again, this arrogance, this anger, that, oh, Paris wants to have sustainable. Paris wants to lead the world, sustain the world. What about us in the countryside who barely make enough money to survive? We have to have we need a way out. And we cannot go to work like you people in Paris on the subway, on the metro. We have to spend money on gasoline. We have to work hard. And that we have to, and we cannot survive unless we have and use that car. The uprising was rooted in class divide that exposed the resentment of many working class people whose livelihoods are threatened by the clean energy transition against the metropolitan elites, especially in Paris, who can afford electric cars and can bicycle to work, unlike those who live in the countryside. Now, as Ms. Dour and others watch the global climate talks underway in Glasgow, where experts and officials are warning that immediate action must be taken in the face of a looming environmental catastrophe, the economic and political disconnect that nearly tore France apart 3 years ago remains just below the surface. And what do they highlight here? Of course, it says here, household gas prices have gone up 12.6% in the past month alone, partly the result of shortages linked to the coronavirus. Electric cars seem fancifully expensive to people encouraged not so long ago to buy fuel-efficient diesel automobiles. A wind turbine that will slash property values is not what a retired couple wants just down the road. So lots of people don't like these wind turbines, these windmills that turn to make electricity because it affects the visual appeal and beauty of the countryside. And people want to live inside because it's beautiful, it's green, with nice pastures. They don't want to see this turbine, so big now. And that means my house that I have in the village will be less valuable. It will have less property value when I try to sell it because people will say, oh, look, that house is close to a wind turbine. We don't want to see that wind turbine all the time. It's so ugly. If Parisians love wind turbines so much, why not rip up the Bush de Vincennes and make an attraction of them? Asked Magali Canal, who lives near Montargis, alluding to the vast park to the east of Paris. For President Emmanuel Macron, facing election in April, the transition to clean energy has become a delicate subject. He has portrayed himself as a green warrior, albeit a pragmatic one, but knows that any return return to the barricades of the yellow vests would be disastrous for his election prospects. And this person goes on, each morning at her farm a few miles from town, Miss Canote gazes from her doorstep at a 390-foot mast built recently to gauge wind levels for proposed turbines. Nobody ever consulted us on this, she said. And it goes on here. We were not considered. Nobody talked to us. Nobody asked us in our village if we want to have these big, vast, huge wind turbines. So what has the government done? The government has attempted to respond. It has frozen household gas prices. An energy check worth $115 will be sent next month to some 6 million people judged most in need. An inflation indemnity for the same amount will also be sent to about 38 million people earning less than $2,310 a month. Gasoline inflation has been a main driver of these measures. Goes on here. Sophie Tichier, who organized a yellow vest protest in Paris in 2019, said a heavy police response made it very hard to restart the movement, despite what she called a grave social crisis and rampant anger. She added that inequalities are so extreme in France that it prevents us making an ecological transition. And President Macron touts the realism of his energy proposals. These combine the development of new small-scale nuclear power with the embrace of wind power and other renewables. So all of a sudden, like in the last 4 days, I'm reading all these news reports about this big commitment to nuclear, fourth generation nuclear power plants that the Americans, the Europeans, the Chinese are going to start energy plants for electricity. And they're developing small-scale nuclear reactors that they say are the size of 2 So you're going to have and so I mean, this like just in the last week, people say if we really want to cut fossil fuel emissions, we've got to go full scale into nuclear. Wind and solar is not enough. You're going to have new nuclear reactors. To his left, the Green Movement wants nuclear power, which accounts already for 67% of France's electricity needs, phased out. Adjustment so enormous that is derided by conservatives as heralding a return to the Kindle era. And of course, of course, these people to the right, the right-wing populists, to Mr. Macron's right, Marine Le Pen favors the dismantling of the country's more than 9,000 wind turbines, which account for 7.9% of France's electricity production. So, Marie, where in Belgium is your family living? So, do you see any of those wind turbines in Ghent? Those big wind turbines that turn to make electricity from wind power? Do you see those a lot in many places in Belgium? You don't see those in Belgium? What about what about off the coast? Are they like located next to the ocean on the coastline? Yeah, I mean, some countries, I guess like Denmark, it's a huge amount of its electricity from wind power. Yeah, wind turbines. So, Marine Le Pen is promising if she gets elected France next year, she's going to dismantle, remove all the 9,000 wind turbines that have been built so far in France. In the middle, millions of French people buffeted between concern for the planet and their immediate needs struggle to adjust. And it goes on to describe these people. Christine Gobet drives her small diesel car about 90 miles a day from the Montargis area to her job at an Amazon warehouse on the outskirts of Orleans, where she prepares packages and earns about $1,600 a month. Sitting at the wheel outside a garage where her diesel engine had just been replaced at a cost of about $3,000, she mocked the notion of switching to an electric car. For people like me, electric is just out of the question, she said. Everything's going up. There's even talk of more expensive baguettes. We were pushed was less polluting. Now we were told the opposite. Yeah, I remember people used to say diesel, diesel, diesel. Now they found out that Volkswagen was lying all of those years. The biggest diesel producing car company in the world, Volkswagen, was cheating on its environmental tests. And in fact, all of these diesel cars are just as, if not more polluting than gasoline cars. So in US, diesel has never been so popular. But in Europe, I think I read once when I was in Bulgaria, over half the cars that were sold in West Europe, they were diesel cars, diesel engines, because diesel was cheaper than gasoline, and it was supposedly cleaner than gasoline. Although those diesel cars, they tend to make a little more noise, right? But and now we found out that's not even true. After millions of these diesel cars were sold in France and in Germany, and then we found out, this is scary, some of the leaders of Volkswagen, including the South Korean president of the Volkswagen subsidiary in South Korea. I think it was the South Korean executive in Volkswagen, South Korea, was arrested because of his lies that Volkswagen was telling the world for years. By cheating, they had some kind of special computer software that when a car was being tested for its pollution output, the car would change to emit less pollution when it was being tested. But when it was on the road, it didn't work. And people went in jail for this. At the start of the Yellow Vest movement, she joined demonstrations in Montargis. It was not just financial pressure that pushed her. It was a sense that we're not listened to. And there's those elites up on top who decide, and we just suffer the consequences. She dropped out of the movement when it became violent. At a traffic circle on the edge of Montargis, known as the Peanut Roundabout, because of the shape, traffic was blocked for 2 months and stores ran out of stock. So, it goes on here talking about, again, these notions that these elites in Paris and elsewhere, they have these big dreams for renewable energy, getting rid of fossil fuels. What about the working people that barely make enough money to survive? Right? What was one of the phrases of this Yellow Vest movement? Emmanuel is worried about the end of the world. But we, the Yellow Vest people, we're worried about surviving to the end of the world. Because they just want money to live. I mean, $1,600 a month. That's nothing in France. And now we have inflation because of the climate, because of the pandemic and the disruptions. Yeah. So, yeah, we're all in favor. Let's move to green energy, renewables, air, wind power, solar power. But it's going to be costly and expensive. And there's all these people that are barely getting by, even as it is. I mean, that Yellow Vest movement started in France when Emmanuel Macron's government put on new taxes on gasoline. Today, she feels little has changed. In Paris, she said they have everything. Anne Hidalgo, the Paris mayor and the socialist candidate for the presidency, wants no more cars in the city and has no time for people from the provinces who go there to work. And so she goes on, so these people are totally different from outside of my world. They don't understand what it's like to be a working class person in France. So at 58, she illustrates a generational chasm. Remember, the European Union is all about appealing to the young people. You. But 58-year-old people with no college degree, At 58, she illustrates a generational chasm. The world's youth, led by Greta Thunberg, is on one side convinced that no priority can be more urgent than saving the planet. On the other are older people who, as Mr. Dior put it, don't want want the last 20 years of their lives ruined by environmental measures that drive energy prices up and the value of their house they put up their money in down. So, it goes on and it just interviews with all these working class people who are not so excited about France's leadership to save planet Earth from Anthropocene climate change. And okay, so I mean, you can read it on your own, but so we'll see what happens. Again, I mean, the expectation is Emmanuel Macron will not get 50% of the vote in the next election, so they have to have the money. Questions? They expect Emmanuel Macron will be in the second round of the presidential election. When there's another person that's not referenced here, this far right Arab Algerian Jewish named Zemmour, who makes these anti-Semitic statements, talks about Vichy France under the German occupation will be good. And he's Jewish. And he's second in the polls. He's a television personality, like Donald Trump was a television personality. He's on the French version of Fox News, which is the American right-wing news service. And he makes these outrageous statements. And he talks like a militant French Marxist fascist. He gets all of this air coverage, and he's leading Marine Le Pen, Emmanuel Macron's opponent, in the second round of the presidential elections next year. And Marine Le Pen doesn't know what to do. She wants the second level, to be in the second round of elections. So let me go back to the cyber campus and ask you. So we go back to the European Union. It's going to say logged out, and it's going to say I have to log back in, and log in, log in. Oh, I got to do this again. Sorry. Ask you to vote. And this is where does it say vote? Where does it say vote? Topo, Toro, Torum. Is this vote? Tupio. Okay, Tupio. So please respond to the following question. Topio means vote. Do you hear that, Maria? Topio is vote. Okay, Topio. So Topio on this question. So you have 15 seconds, and one other person is yet to vote. And so that it is in danger of being considered an elitist project. And that is true in the United States as well. I mean, that the kind of person that voted for Trump views the environmental movement as this elitist project on people who don't experience the life that are barely making enough money to survive. They want instead environmentalists want expensive environmental regulations that raise the price of doing business, that discourage gasoline, oil, and coal by raising taxes on them, pushing people away from them, meanwhile raising the prices of cotton. France or Ohio, where I barely need to survive. It's an elitist project. And they try to respond to those concerns, but it's not just a material economic issue, it's an issue of dignity. Do the leaders of France, do the leaders of Belgium, do the leaders of the United States, do they represent me? When I President Biden, when I President Trump, when I look I see me and the Korean people? Or do I see somebody who's more concerned about do I see somebody who's more concerned about North Korea than he's about my concerns? Okay. So back to the notes. So we talked a bit about agricultural policies already in the class. So I don't think I really want to spend too much time on that because you know, the news discussion now is all about climate change and dealing with the global climate catastrophe that the world is confronting and environmental policy. So it begins to be referenced in the European Union treaties in the 1957 Treaty of Rome, which established the European Economic Community. It did not explicitly address environmental issues, but its reference to the goal of an accelerated raising of the standard of living would be interpreted later on as addressing environmental issues. So it's interpreted later on. What does that mean, interpreted? It's very vague in general. Who interprets? The courts, the leaders of the European Union? That if we really want to talk about raising the level of quality of life of people, of course we want to give them good paying jobs. We want to give them good economy, but we also have to consider the pollution that makes them sick, that affects their health. And so the big focus here initially on environmental issues is that you should support this because pollution causes cancer. Pollution causes disease. Pollution causes your children to be sick. If you don't care about yourself because you're old and you think, well, I smoke anyway, I don't care about, you know, air pollution. But what about your children and your grandchildren? Do you care about them? And, you know, most people say, yeah, I do care about them. So, and of course, some places like Spain, remember, Spain did not join the European community until after the dictator Francisco Franco died in 1975. And Spain, according to what I have read, Spain really did not have any environmental policies under Franco. Spain developed rapidly under Franco after World War II. It had high economic growth rates, still was a poor country. But when Franco died, there were no environmental policies regulating pollution, preventing pollution, because it was a dictatorship serving the interests of the rich and powerful. And so the European Union really gave Spain a set of environmental policies. The European Union made Spain's environmental policies. And, you know, that's significant. In these countries that were ruled by dictatorships that seem to be more interested in making profit for the rich and aggregating capital than in the well-being of typical people, working class people who live in these cities and towns. And so I have to remember that we have to stop recording the Zoom meeting at 10:30. So we should go to our debate so that we make sure that the other two people in the class can participate in that debate and vote on that debate before I shut down the Zoom in 20 minutes or 15 minutes, actually. So let's go to our debate topic. And our debate topic is, to South Koreans, China's authoritarian system prevents the European Union from cooperating with China to lead the world in addressing the global climate emergency, the global climate crisis. And I'm going to, I can't remember who was pro and who was con, because I typically wrote that down in my office, but now we're moving away from our office to the K257. So what I will do is I will again make a breakout room and recreate the rooms and let you choose. And let me say, here's pro. And then who's con? And then we'll make this con. And so choose whether or not you will join pro or con. And so please join those groups as to your choice, pro or con. So Tech, Maria, UJE, and Kang Tong-un, please join the groups that you prefer, pro or con. So Maria is pro, Tech is pro. Kang Tong-un, UJE, please join one of the groups. Where's Kang Tong-un? Yeah. UJE? UJE. Oh, okay. Kang Tong-un, are you going to go con as well? Kang Tong-un.
Pro.
Are you going to join con?
Pro.
Pro. Okay, well, why I don't see why you're still not listed as pro if you want to be pro. And so maybe I'll just assign you to pro since you want to be pro. Okay, so I will be con with UJE. And so UJE, I want to talk to you. So, so who's going to speak first for pro? So please join those groups. I think you've all joined the groups, right? So Kang Tong-un, okay, there we go. And UJ, so let me, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call UJE on the telephone. Just to show you that I'm not afraid to do that. And where is student monitoring? So UJE, I'm going to call UJE. We're going to prepare our statement. So pro, prepare your statement. And who's going to speak first for pro? And it's going to be heads, it's Maria. And it is heads. So Maria's going to speak first for pro. Well, you're probably all get a chance to speak. Huh? Oh, you want the other one? Okay, Kang Tong-un or Wong Tech? I thought Wong Tech spoke for the other one. Let's see here. I'm going to work with UJE on con. You want to be con? Which one? There's only 4 people here. 3 are in pro and 1 is in con. Kang Tong-un? Okay. Kang Tong-un, you're going to speak for pro. And so UJE, and so, okay, so now I'm going to call UJE and ask her to consult with her as to how we're going to do our debate. She's going to speak, of course, first. So let me call UJE. 6, 7. So talk to each other. No answer. UJE. Where are you, UJE? Answer your phone. UJE. Hello, UJE? No answer. Okay. So, all right, so I'll be con. let's hear your statements as to, let's hear what, I'm always kind of concerned when I shut down the computer accidentally. So Kang Tong-un, so you have 60 seconds. Well, you wrote paragraphs. Use your paragraphs. Use the paragraphs you wrote. You already wrote down your ideas, right? So you know what to say. You know, one of the purposes of these debates is to give you opportunity to speak, you know, in class, you know, practice your writing and speaking. UJE has disappeared. 25 seconds. Seven seconds. Okay, so Kang Tong-un. Go back to the, so Kang Tong-un, you're pro. What is your statement for pro? Kang Tong-un?
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes. Turn on your camera, please.
Okay.
So that we can and look into so that we can see you. We can't see you. We can just see your hair.
Can I just talk in
Go ahead.
okay.
Like you said, you wrote your paragraph, so you can read your paragraph
Okay.
to start.
Okay, China would attend international conferences in the future and argued environmental conservation, but if they get a loss because of the environmental conservation, they will stop the conservation, I think. So China's authoritarian system prevents the EU from cooperating as partners with China.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, totally. Word.
Okay. So I'm Khan, and I'll make the Khan statement. Well, during the Cold War, the European Union was quite willing to cooperate with China, authoritarian, one-party communist China during the Cold War. The European Union was quite willing to do massive business with China until Donald Trump became president in 2016 and started putting tariffs in a trade war and putting tariffs on Chinese imports. So from 1970s, when Jimmy Carter, president of the United States, formally recognized China, from that point on, the Europeans, along with their American ally, all the way for the next 40 years, made vast, massive investments in China. So that China, Germany's biggest trade partner is with China today. This concern about the authoritarian system in China, that's a recent development. That's something that I'm not saying it's unknown before, but during the Cold War, it didn't prevent the European Union from doing massive business with China. There was a time when the United States and China, United States and the European Union put sanctions on China in 1989 when the Chinese army crushed the Tiananmen Square demonstrations for democracy in 1989 in Beijing and killed hundreds of students. Could be even more, we don't really know. And the US and European Union put some economic sanctions on China. And then 10 years later, they removed them. They removed those sanctions on China. It happened when I was in Bulgaria. And as I mentioned, so that until relatively very recently, and still to this day, China is the biggest trade partner with Germany. So clearly, this European Union concern with the political system in China depends upon other concerns and other interests that the European Union faces. And if we are really talking about the future of the human race, as some people are describing the magnitude of the crisis we face in terms of tremendously costly catastrophes, weather catastrophes that will cause massive migration of people from Africa and Latin America to attempt to enter Europe, to increasing disasters that cause political instability in these countries that lead to the rise of new dictatorships. And China is going to be quite willing to cooperate with those authoritarian leaders in Africa and the rest of Asia that may well emerge in the midst of this tremendous national and global crisis that the world is facing. And if the European Union needs China's cooperation to regulate and control the effects of those crises, like, for example, on developing resources in Africa in a way to give jobs to those people so they don't come to Europe because they're going to go to Europe, right? There's already big influx of refugees due to worsening droughts, weather catastrophes in Africa. And where are those people going to go? They're not going to go to China. They're going to go to Europe, where they're going now. The same environmental problems in Latin America. There are terrible droughts in Guatemala and in parts of Central America that is causing farmers to lose their farms and leave everything and try to enter the United States. They're not going to go to China. So I think that clearly the European Union will be able to convince its people, if it needs to, that they need to cooperate with China in order to defend the national interests of Germany and France and Italy and Greece as the worsening economic consequences and migration consequences of global climate change are going to threaten more and more immigration into Europe from the rest of the world. And that is the key critical issue in European populism today: migration. We don't want more people from non-white countries coming to Italy, coming to France, coming to Belgium, coming to Europe from Africa and Asia and the Middle East. That is what led to Boris Johnson and the Brexit referendum being successful in Britain. And it's the main challenge that confronts the establishment rulers in Europe today, that populists like Marine Le Pen and this man Zemmour and the Alternative for Deutschland and Matteo Salvini in Italy, they exploit this xenophobia among these nationalistic publics in their countries. Okay, so Owen Tech, what is your response?
Whether developed or developing. According to the principles, the European Union does not sign FTA with countries that accept the death penalty on human rights issues. In addition, democracy and human rights are mentioned as important conditions for discussing economic cooperation with other countries. But China is not only politically authoritarian, but also seriously infringing on democracy and human rights in regions such as Xinjiang. Therefore, the European Union can cooperate with China only when it points out and solves China's human rights and political issues when discussing global issues such as climate change.
You have the last word.
just read mine? Or? I think if China's authoritarian system wouldn't be in the way of China's and the EU's cooperation, the EU would accomplish great goals concerning the global climate crisis. And first of all, the EU accomplished the role of a global leader in reducing the greenhouse gases, regulating chemicals, and lessening waste. But unfortunately, the EU cannot achieve these goals anymore as their financial plans exceed the budget they have available. So if the EU and China were to work together, the budget would be immensely bigger and more opportunities would appear to reduce climate change.
I mean, I think that the European Union is only complaining about China's internal affairs because its American patron and ally has been complaining about it. The European Union would not be focusing on it so much, potentially interfering with trade and economic cooperation with China if the Americans were not pushing it. I don't see the Europeans complaining and preventing their cooperation, for example, with the leaders, the non-democratic leaders of Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, which have lots of oil and coal and gas there. You never hear a European Union complaining about well, they do complain about it, but that's not interfering with their economic involvement there. This is all an American issue. And it may require that the European Union needs to break with the United States, because the United States may not have the political capacity to provide global leadership on this issue. It has to be China in partnership with the European Union. And so I want to, again, make sure that we have a chance to vote on this topic. And so back to Cyber Campus and Tokyo. And okay. So here's the vote. Here's the topic. Please vote. And so we see 3 people have already voted. You can change your mind, I guess, if you want to. And there are 4 people have voted. Okay. So, I mean, during times of crisis, right? I mean, that has not stopped the United States from cooperating with Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union during World War II, right? I mean, why? Because they had a bigger problem with Hitler. But Stalin was Stalin. So the question, yes, go ahead. Don't have to what? A closed reporting? Oh, close recording. Yeah. I mean, close recording. Yeah. I'll do that now. Thank you. I better do it now because this computer is slow. Okay. Bye, UJE and Kang Tang-un.